gentlemen, thank you for coming today. My name is Lou Moore. I'm the National Campaign Manager for Ron Paul 2008. We're come here today to talk about the economy, an issue that is of utmost importance to all of us. And Dr. Paul is going to talk today about his approach to the economy, which is quite a bit different than what you've heard from the other candidates running for the presidency. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ron Paul.
Hi. Hello. Thank you. Thank you very much. I didn't want to miss this opportunity to talk about the economy. I didn't get very much time last night to talk about it. I tried my best. But I did get a couple points in. But anyway, I welcome the opportunity to talk to individuals who are interested in the economy. And I guess it was the debate when Tim Russert asked the question. He says, now that foreign policy is not on top of the list and the economy is at the top of the list, we'll start talking about the economy. And that's when I sort of chirped in and said, well, yeah, it's pretty hard to separate the two. I mean, how can you talk about the economy and not talk about the cost of a foreign policy that we have? It's just totally impossible. Of course, it reminds me of what's going on today. It reminds me of what was going on in the 60s, where many of my ideas were formulated. Because it was during the 60s, I was both getting out of medical school, in medical training, in the military, and the war was going on, and the welfare system was being expanded, and I came across Austrian economics and started studying. At that time, I guess the first book I read was Hayek's book, The Road to Serfdom, and I was delighted to see that he eventually was recognized and won a Nobel Prize, so gave a lot of credibility to the Austrian School of Economics. But I was fascinated with economics, and of course, I love medicine and did a lot of medicine over the years, and feel very fortunate that I've been able to both be involved in politics and in medicine, but also to hopefully participate in some very, very important discussions about the economy. And the one particular interest I've had in Austrian economics has been the monetary policy, because it's emphasized tremendously. If you want a sound economy, you can't have a sound economy without a sound currency. I mean, it's just foolish to even think about it. It was, in the early 70s that we had the wage and price controls put on by our great Republican administration back then. So I was very impressed with that, because that was more or less a prediction made by many of the Austrian economists that the Bretton Woods type of monetary system would break down. Of course, that was established in 1945, and Henry Hazlitt, the journalist and economist who befriended Mises when he came over here right as World War I was breaking out. And Mises, of course, Jewish, had to just barely escape with his life. But Henry Hazlitt befriended him, although Mises never got any type of an appointment of note, even though I consider him probably the greatest economist of the 20th century. But anyway, Hazlitt, at the time of Bretton Woods, made some very strong predictions and said that the Bretton Woods wouldn't work. And that was a gold exchange standard, a pseudo-gold standard. The dollar was to be backed by gold, but you know it had to be a pseudo-gold standard because gold was illegal to own in this country. It had been made illegal in the 1930s, and it was only legal if you were a foreign bank. And then you could, if we printed too many dollars, the theory was that the central bankers or others could come and take gold from us. And I remember that clearly in the 60s. The Americans were really anti-French, because de Gaulle and his advisors said, hey, you guys are printing too many dollars, and we know that the ratio between dollars and gold has not been, it can't stay at $35 to the ounce. So they started taking gold. And we foolishly, propped up the price of the value of the dollar, and kept the price of gold down, quote price, And we literally gave up almost 500 million ounces of gold. We had over 700, went down to, I think we have 200, supposedly we have 272 right now. Someday we ought to have a true audit to find out. But of course, the predictions were that it would break down, and I can remember that August 15th, 1971 very clearly. And Nixon and the administration made the announcement, and wage and price controls were put on place. A 10% import tax was put in place, and the gold window was closed. And I thought it was devastating news. I mean, this was a major event. This was the breakdown of that fixed exchange rate and the Bretton Woods Agreement. But to me, the next day was astounding, because the stock market skyrocketed. You know, it went up more in one day than it had ever in our history, which meant the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, the politicians, everybody loved it. And I thought, what is going on here? I mean, this looks horrible. I think it's ushering in a bad age, a bad, decade at least. But, the truth was it was ushering in a bad decade. The immediate reaction was euphoria, and people felt better that this would be a solution. Raising taxes and destroying the money and saying if inflation is unlimited, and yet the decade was payback. I mean, we had stagflation, meant a very weak economy, very high interest rates in order to save the dollar. Interest rates went up to 21%. Unemployment rates were, I forget, maybe 12%. Inflation, even according to the government, was as high as 15%. And it was this that actually ushered in, Reagan's election in 1980 because of the very sick economy. Well, you'd think we'd have learned some lessons. The one thing that I did learn was I didn't think it would function very well after 1971, but actually they were able to restore enough confidence in the dollar, even though it is a total fiat currency. The world came around to accepting a perceived value in the dollar, and it maintained a reserve status, a reserve currency status, and the world economies kept taking the dollar. And so it became a pretty good deal for us. We didn't have to produce anymore. We didn't have to produce cars and steel and all these products. All we had to do was print money. And, of course, where'd our jobs go? They all went overseas. The real good jobs went overseas. And the currency had a lot to do with it, but also, artificially high wages, the inflation that we had, the high taxes and regulations made us less competitive. So since that time when we restored confidence to the dollar in 1979 and 1980 under Volcker, we've done a lot more harm, and we've created a much bigger mess for ourselves. Because back then we didn't have the current account deficit. We didn't have this extremely high foreign debt, probably close to $3 trillion now. Our national debt was under a trillion. Now it's $9 trillion. And the entitlement obligation. Now, nobody knows the exact number, and it depends on how you calculate them. But most people admit they're $60 or $70 trillion. And that always gets the attention of young people when I talk about economics, because, if you know about this, you say, well, boy, I better make plans. I don't think I'm going to depend on the government to take care of me with my Social Security check. It just won't work. And, of course, the best position that I can offer young people on that is if we did the right thing immediately and got our house in order, we could let all the young people at least get out of Social Security,